What's going on, team? Welcome to tonight's Sunday night video. I'm just gonna sit down and talk to you guys. Like, I have a good 5 or 6 vlogs backed up that are gonna come out this week. Just haven't got around to editing them. Life's been a little bit crazy. So much going on. I'm trying to keep up. A quick starting note, this week we had the news, obviously, around the Reebok lawsuit with CrossFit and Reebok. Freaking hell is that? A light aircraft. Apparently the lawsuit has been settled, I reckon for around $4.8 million. That's what CrossFit were going after, and looking at the contract and the clause, CrossFit weren't settling for anything less, and if they didn't get what they wanted, that would have ultimately concluded that they could just tear up the contract that they had. And I think with all these changes that are happening, Reebok wanted to stay in the loop, wanted to stay a part of CrossFit. Anyway, on my Instagram story the other day, I asked, do you like the changes or do you don't? And the vast majority you don't. I'm in that I do. And with this, of course, I'm talking about the removal of regionals and the 16 sanctioned events that have been announced. It's now obviously official on the CrossFit website. They announced that the Dubai Fitness Championships is the first of the sanctioned events. CrossFit is a business. Dubai Fitness Championships has the money. They had the highest caliber of athletes outside of the CrossFit Games at their event last year. Basically, I think the way that it worked is that if you qualified for it, they would pay for your flight and they'd also give you money for qualifying, and then depending on what event you won, you'd also win money. So for all of the high level athletes, that was a perfect way for them to kind of make money doing CrossFit and travel the world at the same time. You can also see why CrossFit has signed with the Dubai Fitness Championships. It's not in USA where CrossFit is saturated, it's not in Europe where CrossFit is saturated, but it's in that kind of new emerging market where they want to grow CrossFit. Before we go any further, don't worry, guys, Dave Castro is going nowhere, according to CrossFit as well and Greg Glassman. Dave Castro is still going to be the director of the CrossFit Games. That's not going to change. We still get his terrible handwriting, his forever changing haircuts. We still get to remember his terrible deadlift. But ultimately is epic planning and giving us, like this year, one of the best games to watch. And looking at the CrossFit competition market at the moment, when you're looking at other possible sanctioning events, one of them that really sticks out is Wadapalooza.
Being on some chill.
The other is Granite Games.
0 to 100 real quick.
Over here in Europe, you may be looking at the French Showdown. That's probably the biggest competition within Europe. If you wanted to move into the UK, it may be the European Championships. And if we're looking across the pond at somewhere like Australia, maybe the Korean Pro, probably Australia's biggest competition, which usually takes place in November, that could also become a sanctioned event. That's 4 off the top of my head. If you do think of any others, do put them down below. And with these sanctioned events, Greg Glassman wants them to happen every 2 weeks. So over 16 events, that's 32 weeks of a season. And what I'm hoping will happen over these 32 weeks is we know CrossFit they've actually outsourced their media. So hopefully we'll get good coverage of these 32 weeks, these 16 competitions through kind of Facebook, Instagram, the CrossFit Games site. So from a fan perspective, yeah, we lose out on regionals and maybe seeing our favorite athletes over 5 weeks, but we do get to see 16 really high level competitions with great athletes throughout them and a lot more regularly. Obviously the competitions would have happened without CrossFit, but hopefully the coverage will happen and there'll be higher level athletes there, so then we get a better viewing experience. Also, because CrossFit will be done over a season, does this mean that there will be more regular drugs tests? Does this mean that at these competitions they will be doing drugs tests, so instead of just having the regionals where they'll drug test their athletes and the games where they'll drug test their athletes over this period of time and so many competitions, will we see a better level of drugs testing? And I think it could be a major stepping stone into making the sport that little bit more legitimate. We as CrossFitters around this change have kind of 3 separate opinions. One is kind of like me, I'm just like, yeah, go for it, you know, it's gonna be good. The second opinion being like, I absolutely hate it and I think it's gonna ruin the sport. Adrian Munweiler put out on his Instagram, rest in peace CrossFit, hello CrossFit Circus, followed by, it's not impressive to be a games athlete anymore. Or are you one of those people kind of like Sam Briggs where you just have so many questions like everyone else does? Sam Briggs bringing up a good point. Is UK going to be UK, or are we going to have England, Scotland, Wales and Ireland? And her statement being big changes are ahead, and of course I'm saddened by the fact that I don't get to compete at regionals again. The competition floor with the European crowd cheering and screaming us trying to earn a spot for the games has been some of the highlights of my career. But nothing changes for me as I'm an athlete. I'm still training hard. I'll still be battling to get back to the games no matter what the path looks like. But underneath in the hashtag she said the year where CrossFit went mad. But also she said change can be good. You're one of those people that are kind of like hesitant to dive in. And also here halfway through this video, can you imagine walking into your CrossFit affiliate doing Ron Wad and then just chickens walking in? But if you're looking at this outline and structure as a way for making it to the CrossFit Games, the IFBB the International Federation of Bodybuilding has kind of the same structure and it's worked. Only the winner of each qualifying event goes to... However, they also give out points. So if you do numbers of competitions and you place well at every single one of the competitions, you'll get a certain amount of points. And then at the end of the season, the top 5 people with a certain amount of points will also be invited to the... So basically that way gives athletes a chance to either be good at what they're doing, win one of these CrossFit sanctioned events with epic athletes in it and send them to the games. They deserve to go there. Or if they're super consistent, placing top 5, top 6 in every single one of the events, they can rack up enough points to go to the CrossFit Games. Yes, that may be very financially expensive, but also as the sport of CrossFit grows, also the sponsorships, the money and everything else comes with it at being one of those top athletes. So that could mean that we'll get a better caliber of athletes at the CrossFit Games, ones that can compete and are proven to be able to compete. Also, the question is still raised about the people that, I won in Madagascar. Madagascar's going to be a really hard country next year because so many people are planning on moving there. But you know what I mean? Like, the best in the country will be generally good, but hopefully they'll put a level and standard and kind of barrier there. In the horse world, they kind of have the same qualifying procedures.
They have like an affiliation. So you affiliate to a certain level, and then once you competed, you gain points in your placing. So like first to 10th, you'll get points. As soon as you've accumulated a set amount of points, you then can't compete at that level, you move up to the next level, and so on and so forth. So it would, for example, potentially alleviate qualifiers because people would have already gained a certain level to be able to enter that competition, and it would be restricted to people of that level.
So the qualifiers and the points could come from the Open, so that means the Open could technically still be very, very important. And speaking of the sanctioned events, if you do look at the Wodapalooza, for instance, they have an elite men category, an RX category, which is obviously still very competitive, intermediate and scaled. So depending on your placing within the Open, you could technically compete at some of these sanctioned events in the elite men category or in the elite women category for a chance to go to the CrossFit Games. Basically, it would be like a leaderboard for CrossFit Games athletes to battle it out. But obviously this then comes with a downfall, as Jacob Heppner spoke about on his video, link down below. That means there's no real off-season. Part of being one of the best athletes in the world is sometimes peaking for a select event and then taking a good long off-season to work on your weaknesses. For some athletes that may be the case, the ones that will win the Open or one of the first sanctioned events, but if you're one of those people that maybe plays 3rd or 4th at one sanctioned event and then you miss out just on the 2nd sanction and the 3rd one, you could have a very long season of competing. And depending on if you have to do qualifiers for each one of the events and we don't go off the Open scores, you could just spend your whole year trying to get to the CrossFit Games. Obviously this is all speculation, we are waiting for a rulebook. I'm not going to do another video on this after this video. These are kind of all my thoughts. Just getting you guys tweaking about it before they say something. And also, if we're actually looking at the Olympics, the way that you qualify for the Olympics is you attend your national championships, qualify and dominate for the Olympic trials, get used to traveling a lot. Basically, I think it's kind of the same qualifying process. You have to be very consistent, place well. But then obviously here, taking a step back, we are talking about the top 1% of athletes out there. And this change won't honestly really affect us that much, like the other 99% of us. Just putting it out there though, regionals compared to the Wodapalooza, I would choose on going to the Wodapalooza over regionals. The event is absolutely insane. And I think as a fan experience, these competitions actually do a better job of putting on a bigger production for the spectators that are there, so if it can get televised, it could be a better fan experience. Like this year, we travelled to Berlin to go and watch the regionals. If it was a sanctioned event in France or Berlin or anywhere else next year, I would still travel to make the effort to go there and watch it like I would watch if it was at Berlin next year and it was regionals rather than a sanctioned event. It would probably just be a bigger production and a better... My mind's running off with me. But yeah, the other question is, where does it leave the other 99% of athletes? Well, for a lot of the people that just participate in the Open, they do it for fun, they do it for community, they do it at the box. But for people like myself, or maybe in the top 10%, top 5% of athletes that their whole kind of goal was going to regionals, honestly, I don't think much has changed. Yes, we wanted to get in the top 20. We wanted to go to regionals, that was kind of like our thing. But if you actually look at it in a way that maybe you can earn points from the Open and maybe accumulate points over doing a few different competitions to go to one of these sanctioned events. If this is the case, and if part of the opportunity to go to one of these sanctioned events and compete in, say, the elite category comes down to your Open place, and then there's still everything to fight for. I would love to go to one of these sanctioned events alongside Noah Olsen, who's trying to qualify for the Games, and just be on the same floor as him. So I don't think the Open at all will be dead. At the end of the day, team, I'm going to do CrossFit regardless of any of these changes because I love doing the sport. I'm also going to watch the CrossFit Games regardless of any of these changes. because I love watching people do adult PE in a sports hall that is a stadium and run around on the grass outside and do a child's playground obstacle course race and drag dummies across fields. And to be honest, I don't think CrossFit is stupid. As the sport's growing, as it's evolving, it needs to have different coping methods. This year alone, we had 40,000 males in R1 region, and we had all that controversy earlier in the year about people qualifying for the CrossFit Games that maybe shouldn't have. So will this even out the playing field? Keep an open mind. Anyway, regular vlogs will resume back tomorrow. If you did enjoy this video, as always, smash that like button. I feel like I've talked my whole life away, and maybe I've talked about absolute garbage that is gonna come out to be no point system at all. You only qualify from the sanctioned events as the fittest guys in the world. Who knows? Thank you for tuning in. You guys rock. And to finish off today, here's our Prime Minister in the UK, Theresa May, dancing really terribly. But at least she's given it everything she's got, and I think CrossFit are doing the same. We'll see you guys in the normal vlog tomorrow.